Josh, I got to say, when you came up with this stat in our pre-show meeting, I was very surprised. Last 30 days, Astros number one in team OPS. I'm old enough to remember when the Astros were 15th in the league. And so the offense have woken up. So guys, why aren't the results there for Houston if this offense has exploded like this?
Too much up and down. You score 11 runs one night and 2 runs the next night. You're averaging 6.5 runs per game. But you know what? You probably went 1-1 in those 2 games. So over the last 30 days, the Astros record is 14-11 or so, which is right in line with their season-long winning percentage, which is good. Right, 14-11 might not sound real good, but that's 90-win baseball, which isn't great, but it's good. And that's the pace the Astros are on to finish winning 91 games or so, which in all likelihood will be enough to certainly be in the playoffs and probably win this division. But they're clearly a cut or 2 levels inferior from as recently as last year and most of what we've seen during this dynasty run.
Yeah, to go along with them being first in OPS over the last month, let's look at the pitching. Over the last 30 days, their team ERA is 20th. So, I mean, if you compare that to most of the season, they've been in the top 10. But now this the sample size gets down to the last 30 days. Bats are getting hot. Pitching has gotten worse. So that's something to monitor. I will say in the last 15 days, the team ERA is down to 10th. So that's better. But it kind of goes back and forth, based on how these games go, how these pitchers are getting lit up. I know that's obvious, but I say that because last 7 days, ERA 16th. So they just keep going, every week they kind of keep going up and down and kind of regressing to the mean there. But the hitting is really being pretty consistent over the last month of the season. So if they could just get the starting pitching going, get JP France back to way he was pitching, a month or 2 ago. Maybe Christian Javier has found something. He can get it going. But, Fromber's doing Fromber things. To me, it's Verlander. They got to get Verlander consistent again. I think he can do it. We only got 2 weeks here, but let's just make this final push. Let's win some games. Verlander, Fromber, we're looking at you guys. And guys, keep swinging the bat like you're doing because it's working.
Big picture. Last year, they finished 50 games, 5-0, 50 games over 500. This year, they're going to finish about 20 games over 500. This team is not nearly as good as last year's team. Following up on Verlander, interesting choice to have him start the first game against the Orioles. Right, the biggest 3 games, every game's critical at this point, but the biggest 3 games are at Seattle next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So by Verlander going in the Monday night game against the Orioles, well, 4 days rest would mean he pitches Saturday, which takes him out of the Seattle series. Unless you're going to bring him back on 3 days rest next Wednesday in Seattle, which would be, in a word, stupid. The alternative to that, if, hey, you want Verlander and Fromber starting 2 of those 3 games at the Mariners next week, well, Verlander going Monday, he doesn't pitch again until next Monday, right? And he's fretted sometimes. I like 4 days rest. I prefer 5 days rest. Well, last year on more than 5 days rest, his ERA was sub-1. So I don't know if they've had the conversation or will after the Monday start. But Verlander, to me, does not pitch again until next Monday in that opener in Seattle. Fromber, having gone Sunday in Kansas City, would be on rotation to go Friday night again against the Royals. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 days rest for Fromber in that finale at Seattle. And then, hey, if it comes down to game 162, be it for the division or to get a wild card, Fromber would be available on 3 days rest in game 162 at the Diamondbacks. I presume, at minimum, hope the Astros have gone through all these permutations on this because I absolutely, like Verlander's been money every start. Fromber seems to be back on the beam. But clearly those 2 guys in Seattle, you would want starting 2 of those 3 games as opposed to any 2 of the other Astros starters right now.
Yeah. Speaking of starters, JP France has certainly come back down to earth. His ERA is up to 3.84, which on the surface sounds good. But when you look at his last 7 games and see that his ERA is 6.69, that is not as impressive. So, we talked about, hey, JP's this found money. Maybe he, leapfrogs some of these guys like Urquidy and Javier in the order, especially when we get down into the playoffs. I wonder if that's still the case now. Is there a looks like JP probably, especially with the lack of experience. First of all, I guess, what are you guys seeing from JP? Because one of his big things, and I know he was kind of living on a razor's edge with some of these situations earlier on in the season. He was able to kind of, tiptoe around. These are now blowing up in his face now, but his control doesn't look like it's there as much as it was early in the season. But what are you guys seeing from JP, and has this kind of put Javier back in a place to kind of reclaim that third best player in the pitcher in the rotation?
I think in part he was wonderfully and vitally for the Astros over his head for his first 2-3 months in the rotation, and the performance was the performance. Now, he didn't have a major league mean in terms of his career to regress to, but in the minor leagues, he basically was never as good as he was with the Astros over his first 15 starts. He was always wild in the minors. So whether, he was just on a good run that tapered off because he absolutely has lost his command over recent starts. Brandon, you used the word fatigue. He's among the Astros pitchers who's blown past his prior career professional high in innings pitched. So among France and Javier and Brown, recency bias wins for me 2 weeks from now. It's a 2-week audition to see who's that third starter, and you need a fourth starter in a longer series. Caveat to that, especially if you wind up in the wild card, you don't really get much choice, right? You're playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The wild card is Tuesday, Wednesday, if necessary, Thursday. It's who has rest, who's available to go when, that dictates who your starting pitchers would be. But if they indeed, as they still should, win this division, regular season ends Sunday, division series doesn't start until Friday. Then you can line them up exactly the way you want, and then the Astros have that decision to make, starting with the number 3 guy.
Yeah, I think it is. Whoever performs the best over these next couple of weeks, that's the hot hand. Unfortunately, that's just kind of where you are. And with France, it's the walks. And yeah, he is a guy that walked a lot of guys in the minors, but 4 in his last start, 5 in the one before that, 3 in the one before that. That's a lot of walks. And he's not a guy that strikes out a ton of people. So those walks come around to score if you give up some doubles here or there, and then you're in trouble. So I think that's what's going on with him. The league's starting to figure him out a little bit. He's getting a little tired, but you can't keep shooting yourself in the foot and walking guys. And that's been an issue for most of this Astros rotation throughout the course of the year. They're self-inflicted wounds.